Welcome, Vlog Thursday 391. Happy 4th of July, which is probably pretty common for Americans to say. It's just, hi, it's 4th of July in Europe right now. But I imagine enough of them know that we celebrate today, and today is a day that many people will have less fingers by the end of the day than, well, when it started. Let's just hope that's none of you. Probably not, because you're here watching somebody on 4th of July talk about computers and tech. So welcome, all of you that have already joined. As always going forward, I'm getting a little more organized. That's always a goal, so push myself towards some type of organization. So we will start out with where and when you can find Tom. And that's going to be CompTIA ChannelCon in Atlanta, July 30th through August 1st of 2024. GERCON, September 26th and 27th in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 2024. I don't probably need to say that each time, but I will. Wild Wild West Hacking Fest, October 9th through 11th of 2024, and IT Nation Connect, November 6th through 8th, 2024. I just got back from, I don't announce my trips. I announce when I get back from them usually. I don't know. The camping trip went well. I've started doing that little bit of adventure. So it's been taking a little bit of time off. That's why there's gaps in videos. I like doing outdoor things in the summer, especially motorcycle things, but I don't do a lot in the winter. So if you were actually to start staring at when Tom creates more videos, it's when it's too hot to go outside, which isn't too often in Michigan, or it's in the winter when it's too cold to be happy outside for any length of time. So these are not my most productive months. June, July, and August, and well, the end of June for some of the travel I've been doing. But nonetheless, I am still doing the live streams because they take much less effort. I just put in a stupid thumbnail and go live. It's a lot easier, and then answer people's questions for however many minutes. There's 43 of you on here right now. I was going to do it in the morning, but I wasn't really feeling it. I actually went and wandered off to a parade because I said, hey, why not? Why not do a parade? That seems like fun. Oh, my wife just called me. Let me send her a message. She wants to know how to play Kirby. Bring it, doing live stream. Bring it down here. So that can be an extra added on for the subject of things. Let me pull up something though that I was discussing. So I didn't have a lot to add to the agenda today. I just figured at least I would be consistent and do the live stream. Feel free to ask whatever questions related to open source. But this is one of the problems I keep facing. And let me share this screen over here. And I think this is a cool announcement. This is not in the news, as I state in here. And if you follow me on the socials, you'll find me named Lawrence Systems most everywhere, including on Reddit. So Proton just launched a privacy focused alternative to Google Docs. I think this is a good thing. I think that's cool. But if I'm not mistaken, Proton, Wikipedia, Proton Company, I guess I probably got to look at. Proton Holdings. So I want to start, though, with what Proton is. Let's see. Proton Holdings, known as Proton, stylized as Proton, is a Malaysian multinational, not the automotive company. That's the wrong one, too. They have a name that makes it harder to figure out. There we go. Proton AG. Got to figure out which Proton we're talking about here, because the first result was actually like protons. Let's see. History. They're a group of a Swiss technology company. This is where it's kind of a problem to me. They're not set up, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, they're not an organization. They're a company still. Now, at this time, my understanding of Proton, Proton AG is owned by the Proton Foundation. Proton is headquartered in Switzerland. Okay, but what is the Proton Foundation? Are they a nonprofit? These are things that I'm a little bit confused on, because I'm always hesitant. I'm going somewhere with this, don't worry. I'm always hesitant to just say everything needs to be in the cloud. I think Proton, as I said, as its current status, has been a good company in terms of their privacy. That being said, I noticed that everyone wants to just put their documents in the cloud. And I feel like, and this is my statement on Reddit, was, or let me find my own, this turned into a discussion on here. And what I said was, this is not a dig at Proton. In their current status, they seem to be doing a good job around keeping things private. Correct me if I'm wrong about this. Am I just showing my age because I don't think having any company hosting my documents via a web app is a good idea in the long term? While I do use Google Docs for my business, for my personal documents, still prefer to use local apps and Syncthing to keep them all up to date on all my systems. I think people keep assuming everything must be a web app all the time, and it just feels weird to me. And I guess you must understand the average user has no way of understanding how to manage self-hosted apps. If you don't know how to install LibreOffice on your computer, I think that's a pretty easy bar for someone having a discussion on Reddit. You should be at least technical enough for that. I get it that some people won't back up their documents and things like that, but if you're a little bit privacy focused, do you need to put all your documents in a web app all the time? And my answer is no. And this is kind of the challenge from a lot of this, is everyone's like just so pushing towards being a web app all the time for all the things. And I'm like, not everything. Like, you can still use local apps for some things, very few things really, because when you talk about, or I even talk about most of the things, even Syncthing has a web interface. And I get it. Web interfaces are pretty acceptable because now they don't have to write a web interface for each version of things. They can simply write a web interface, and then whatever browser you're using on Mac, Windows, or Linux will just pull this up. And then they only have to worry about the, back end of it, if you will, and presenting it as a web interface. So I get there's some advantages to doing things like that, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like old man yells at cloud. It's not where I thought I'd be, but sometimes where I feel like I'm going, with so many people wanting just everything to be a web app all the time. It's just kind of it's a weird push that things are going to. But hey, we don't always have to keep everything a web app. I'm throwing it out there. Let me know if you're with me on that one. That being said, upcoming videos I will be working on is updated Syncthing video. I realize I've been using it for probably over 8 or 9 years, and Syncthing has added more features. My old video is still relevant. It just does more now than it did before. So I will be doing a new video on Syncthing. I think it's still one of my just favorite tools for doing things. I'm even adding in specifically why I've added a couple more things on here. This is some RetroArch things I'm testing, is I want to make sure there's some okay tutorials on this, but I want to make one that's better for some specific features that you can do with Syncthing. One of them is synchronizing, and Jay from Learn Linux TV does this as well. It's synchronizing your RetroArch stuff if you're really into a lot of the RetroArch games, which I will tell you, they are really popular amongst all the technology people I know. Not just Jay, but a lot of my friends, we love the retro game stuff because I don't like a lot of the modern games. Go back to see my age. Maybe that's what it is. I grew up playing Mario and I want to play Mario again. Matter of fact, I went through and beat Mario's, all of them, including Mario World. I've been going through all of them again, from the first one, second one, third one. I love the second. I went through that one twice just because, wanted to do Super Mario twice. But how do you synchronize between your devices? How do you add some of those retro games there? I like playing with the emulator stuff. It's been a hobby of mine for a very long time. So Syncthing, being able to work on there is great. Now, I'll admit, I Pong, yes, definitely played Pong as well. I had access to, found one at a garage sale when I was really, really young for super, like a few dollars, the old original Pong game, and had it at a cabin. It was one of those like exciting things. It was, super cool to be able to play that. But yeah, that was forever ago. I also had an Atari. I don't play as many Atari games. I lack the nostalgia feel for the Atari games, like the Super Nintendo. I had an Atari, thought it was great until I got a Nintendo, and then I thought that was better. But Nintendo, NES, and SNES, definitely happiness. Sega too. So that era is, I've heard it called the golden age of gaming by a lot of people. And I can go with that. I can accept that for sure, as definitely an exciting era of gaming. But back to Syncthing. Syncthing works really well on these devices. We're able to synchronize your save states if you happen to have multiple devices. Just be able to back up the config, because I don't trust gaming systems not to fail. I've also thought about getting a Steam Deck as well to play all the games on there. But yeah, I think my first console was an Atari. Yeah, Atari 400. Yeah, there was some of the, I was at the retro computing event, and it was cool seeing some of those old gaming systems there. I got to look up the dates because I'll probably go back to that. That was just fun. I just had such a good time. I wandered around there for hours just having conversation with people on retro computer stuff, and I was absolutely in my element of happiness there. Good time for sure at the there. Ooh, Paperboy on Commodore. That was I never owned a Commodore. I emulated a Commodore for a long time, but my first encounter with a Commodore was the neighbor kid I didn't like much. The reason I think I liked him was he had a Commodore, and he didn't care that I played with it all the time, so I got to play with his Commodore all the time. He wasn't that fun to hang out with, but the Commodore was great. uh, For your next live stream, bring my Honda to the basement. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go there. But I will admit, if you ever want to go wander around in northern Michigan, that is where me and the wife went, up there. So this is all the way up in by Traverse City area. So that's where I end up vacationing. But yeah, I take my motorcycle on vacation too, because I go put some miles and ride around in all the wonderful open trail areas that they have in northern Michigan, which is quite a bit of state land here. So there we go. I started my home lab about 6 or 8 months ago. Went from Windows to Linux Mint, loving it 100%. So far, however, Mint has been bugging me, thinking it's on a Fedora or Pop! OS. I've never spent much time with Fedora. In the early days, I was a Red Hat user in the earliest of days. I moved to Debian and kind of never looked back. I don't have any problem. And matter of fact, essentially you're using with XCP and gyum and commands like that. They're not that hard. They're not that different from each other between the different OSs. When it comes to the desktop, there might be a few differences. I think Jay's more educated on that, and he's got some videos on Fedora. I just went with Pop! OS because it works. And I might make that video because I've been noticing everyone's doing like their 30-day Linux challenge. I've been using Linux on the desktop consistently for over 15 years. And I'm like, okay, I'll call it my 15-year Linux challenge. And, that's I've been with the Pop! OS probably for the last 4 because it just works well. It just isn't broke. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. It's just an operating system. There was a discussion on Twitter where I said our other YouTube creator friends were all discussing on Twitter that, some people really have strong opinions on this. And I think that those strong opinions hurt people trying to get more into Linux. But I said the big challenge is those strong opinions come from people who put an operating system as part of their persona. And I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, I service Windows all day. In terms of what my business does, we have some Linux stuff, but the majority of when we talk about managing thousands of endpoints, the majority of those thousands of endpoints that we manage at CNWR, they're all just Windows computers. And that's what we have a lot of people we employ their expertise is in, because that's what most businesses use. And I don't spend all day trying to get business to switch, but long story short, my preference for Pop! OS, there's good support for it in terms of finding things. Being based on Ubuntu means you can Google like, hey, Ubuntu this, and find an answer that will also 99% sure work in Pop! OS if you find some incompatibility. I don't really have any hacks or workarounds to get things working. The closest I have is the fact that I've got some scripts in my boot script, and maybe I'll do a Linux video, what's on my desktop. All my boot script does is set a few parameters when I start up. I kick off a few apps and I do this purposefully with a really simple script. I set the audio devices, for example, the microphone that's in front of me. I have to implicitly set it. This is something you can run into with Windows. For whatever reason, because this device, I don't know if it gets picked up later, it always puts it as not the primary audio device. So I just use a control to set that. But other than that, yeah, I haven't had too many big issues with it. Let's see. Syncthing can also do filing versioning, and their phone app can be figured to be active while being charged. Yes, true and true. Happy 4th time watching with a 10 gig link. It turns out Emmy likes to make sure don't care what Cisco says about 10 gig optics. Well, that's good. Welcome to the 10 gig world. Do you run your own relay and discovery for Syncthing? No, I do not. You know what? And that's I seen Steve Gibson brought that up the other day, and I guess I never thought about it. I turn relaying off. Maybe see if it's off on this one. It's probably off. Oop, I think it's just in the settings. Action, it's just in settings, right? Yeah, this is all off for me. I turn all that off. I guess I'm the weird user of Syncthing, and I was kind of surprised to hear Steve Gibson talk about it on Security Now that he uses Relay. I turn it off, and the reason why is I implicitly connect things. Please note, if I were to edit this, the connection is implicit to the system. So I've never used relaying. I've always, even though you can, in theory, transport this across the public internet, I privately do it over VPN. So all my connections, even though they're not physically here and they're dispersed systems, they're all tied together over VPN. The transport layer of Syncthing is encrypted. So in theory, no one will be able to grab that traffic and learn anything from it. But why test that theory? Why not put it behind a VPN? One more layer of obfuscation to make it harder. And why not implicitly list each device? You notice that devices like even this one here, once again, and they're advanced, we've got implicitly the connection. In my videos, I believe I talk about and show that. I have to look at my old videos again for Syncthing, but yeah, relaying's not really been an issue for me because it's one of the first things I turn off. Matter of fact, if you're doing good security monitoring, you'll get flagged that the systems are connecting to Tor, and you'll panic. You're like, whoa, why is my system connecting to these Tor nodes? That might be a problem. Their relay, they offer more than just standard relay servers. I believe some of the relay servers work across Tor, which is cool. I'm glad they offer that for simplicity. I just disable it all because I don't need it. So do pfSense support transparent bridge, IDS, IPS, ClamAV? The problem is, one, it's pretty useless to do that. I need to do a video talking about how in 2024 and beyond, that's not particularly effective. I've done a video on the topic of how to set up transparent bridge with IDS or IPS, I should say. It's just, it's just IDS. It's just detection. I don't think there's any prevention when you do it because it loses the ability to clamp down on the data, but it's not effective. And ClamAV is useless here in 2024. Unless you're going to bother putting in something to peel off the certificates of things, which then creates a whole new set of problems. It's just not that effective to try to scan the files. And I don't think it would actually catch anything. It's a fun exercise in learning in traffic, but it's not a useful exercise. That's why no one bothers with it. I can't say no one. Lots of people like doing it. It's just not very effective. Hello, Oliver. And for those of you who don't know, Oliver is head of Vates, the people behind XCP-NG. And I need to do some updated videos on that. There's been a ton of wonderful changes that XCP-NG. They've been just rocking out changes this year. I was doing a lot of them, and I did a lot of good. I got some good getting started videos. I need to do a new videos. They just released their hyper-converged updates, so they have a video on it. It's easy to find. Watch their video on hyper-converged and how they're using Linbit. Definitely really cool, but definitely a great team over there at Vates. OS War is even worse in France. We are sometimes insulted because we're not. Oh yeah, because we are not Proxmox. Yes, the people who will fight over virtualization. Weird. I have nothing against. I think Proxmox is good. I prefer XCP-NG. I don't hate people who use Proxmox. I think we can all live in a society together. But there are certainly people who are very upset by that statement because it apparently encroaches upon their persona that they have adopted, that the operating system is part of who they are and their identity. And I have attacked them by not liking the software they use, which is just weird to me. I'm so kind of boring, I guess, because I've not adopted a piece of software as part of my personality type. Let's see. Speaking of 10G, migrating Plex library from an R720 to a Supermicro, it's going to take a long time. Yeah. When running TrueNAS-Scale with a higher number of disks, do you see any advantage with SAS over SATA? SAS generally are going to be drives that have a better performance profile. They're going to have a higher queue depth. They're going to be able to, uh, yes, you're going to see some performance. And it's not a matter of a high number of disks that causes the performance. The performance is just there, two different technologies, and one performs better. But you can also take 40 SATA drives or more, and we've done this, and build really good performing storage servers because the load gets spread out, provided you don't do something silly. Someone did this, and we had to break the news to them. We had a consulting job come up where someone, I believe, had 80, it was close to 100 disks. They put in one VDEV, and then we're talking about how slow it is. I'm like, I can't believe it worked. There should have been warnings that tell you not to build a VDEV that big. And they're like, oh, how do I fix this? I'm like, oh, no problem. You just reset it up. And they're like, well, we've unfortunately moved a massive amount of data to it. I said, well, you're going to have to move a massive amount of data off of this machine and reconfigure it. There is no, if you take a bunch of drives and put them in one VDEV, so you divide them up. That's how you want to build your ZFS VDEVs. So that'll definitely be one of those things that's better for your health of the data on there. We have about 2,000 VMs we host ourselves, and our customers all running XCP&G. So small plug for Vates. Yeah, we have, and I've said this a few times. We've consulted with quite a few companies that are larger, sometimes help them with pieces of their infrastructure running XCP&G. They reach out to me because of YouTube and, the videos I've done on it. And they are really happy running it, which is cool. There's a lot of people we meet that have a lot of high volumes, if you will, of virtual machines sometimes spread across multiple data centers. And we've had great conversations with them, is all I can say. You know what I mean? Like, there's not any issues we've run into with scalability with XCP&G. That's something I have a lot of faith in. It's one of the reasons I'm more hesitant. Not that I'm saying Proxmox doesn't scale. I'm just not running into, in the wild, if you will, outside of people who are building it in labs and things like that, larger scale deployments of Proxmox. Not saying it can't be done. It's one of those, I just don't see them. Of course, there's a bias because we do all this YouTube consulting, and a lot of it's for XCP&G because we talk about XCP&G on my YouTube channel. But we actually have done Proxmox consulting as well. So I haven't seen that many people doing them at scale. So a few thousand VMs, not uncommon for a lot of people we've talked to. Things are moving faster and faster with the Broadcom fiasco, and bigger customers as well. Yeah, I imagine Vates sees this much more directly than me as people sign up for this. I mean, Broadcom, I don't know if there's a miscalculation. Like, I know the larger companies are generally slower and harder to move. So Broadcom's hoping they can squeeze them for a lot of money with this merger and just raise rates and call it great. And I don't know. I have actually talked to some people that are some pretty big companies. I'm shocked that they're looking at moving. And for the first time ever, some of the other companies, such as Nutanix has been for sale as a company. Even though they're a big outfit, Nutanix has been a losing money entity forever until this thing happened. So it's one of those, there's a lot of people going, we have to go somewhere else. And I think open source has a big leg up. And where even some of the consulting we've done, the big thing with open source is just the fact that they don't want the same level of large corporate vendor lock-in, because it's going to be the rug pull is kind of what's happening in our industry. VC companies, and Broadcom may have a name that sounds like a tech company, but they're really operating as a venture capital firm, and they just buy these companies and increase the rate of what they charge, and then lose a few customers, make some money, sell it off as a loss when they're done after they pilfered all the money out of it. It's kind of a mess. And I think that's why open source is becoming much more popular and less risk for these companies. Microsoft sold us on all this fear of open source being the bad people, but now that has never really come true, and more like the large corporate companies have definitely proven over and over again to be not great to work with. Happy fourth time. I think a lot of ink spilled over Rustic versus Borg. I don't use either one. Yep, I've never used either one, so I have no opinion on it. So whatever works for you, I don't use either one of those. Let's see. I need to change server to HP ProLiant ML. Can we use Proxmox drivers? I don't understand the question. I'm going for Proxmox for next build, and yes, I will support them and give what they need. They need money to run. Okay. What do you think of the Proxinator? Oh, the Proxinator is pretty cool. We'll probably get one from 45 drives to play with it. I don't know. It's neat. I like the team at 45 drives a lot. I think they're looking a little bit. I've talked to them a couple times. I don't know where they're at with it today, but I don't know if there's a what do you call it? I don't know how much they're looking at XCP-ng at this moment, but I got to talk to them about it. I've brought it up a couple times. I think this is cool, the 45 drives. 45 drives has some more home lab stuff to come out with. They're building some mini PCs. I like the fact that they're getting into that game even more. A fellow who disables Syncthing-Relaying as well. I can go with that. Book recommendations. I actually have a lot of them. I don't have just any book recommendations. I have I got more to add here because I've been reading more books lately. Projects, tech books. Here we go. I will throw this up on the screen here, which is on my website. There's a whole section of tech books that I love. So I've been updating this more and more. We're going to keep putting things on here that kind of, for those that just kind of ask, hey, what books you're reading and things like that. There is quite a few good books I have on here and little descriptions I put for some of them. There's another one, Joseph Cox's book. I've just got it, but I haven't finished it yet. So once I finish it, that one will go here. It is called, I'll pull it up real quick so people can have it. It is called Dark Wire. It is the same book that was also Joseph Cox was part of I think the last Darknet Diaries, not the one that came out just now, but the one that came out last month in June was also about this subject. So this is another one that's going to end up on my as soon as I finish. I don't put a book up until I'm completely done, so I can actually say something intelligent about it. So definitely, I got those book lists if you want to read through any of them. Are there way to do ZFS boot environments from CE on the command line? Not that I know of, but maybe. I'm not sure. I've never tried. On the right side, these megacorps are encouraging more people to embrace FOSS. Yes, absolutely. Many complain about the lack of tight integration of FOSS instead of everything coming from one vendor. But I would not call Microsoft integration with things great in any way. There's no one who really goes and looks at the Microsoft ecosystem, or especially anything Microsoft AI, and says, wow, this is such a complete ecosystem with wonderful experience. And everyone's mostly like, this is a disaster that barely works. It feels like duct tape, and because they use duct tape to put it together. Are HP servers fully compatible with Proxmox? I don't know. I guess it depends on which model server, but generally speaking, I would probably say that most of them are. I very rarely use HP servers. Generally, it's Supermicro and Dell and Lenovo. Those are the three go-to servers that we deploy the most of. But if they're compatible, Proxmox is based on Debian, so if they're compatible with Debian, they should be compatible with Proxmox. Should be, not an absolute guarantee. Proxmox should be compatible with HP servers. Yeah, most of the server equipment works pretty well in Linux, just as a rule. If I need relaying for Syncthing, Tailscale takes care of it. That's exactly how I do it. Tailscale works wonderful for Syncthing. Foss is like the rebellion, more of a confederacy. Empires inherently must resort to extreme measures to preserve themselves. Yeah. uh, yeah, the yeah, the VMware is a lot more picky about the hardware that it runs on. It's not, but generally your other stuff, because it's Linux based, it's a lot more flexible on the hardware that it runs on there. HPE does not provide drivers outside of VMware, Microsoft, Red Hat, Nutanix. However, most works as it's just Linux. Just don't try to open a hardware support because of Proxmox issues. Oh, that's fair enough right there. Yeah, most of the companies, like John Smith said here, they support it in terms of like it works. The drivers are fine, but they support it, but not officially. Like you can't get official tickets and support on there. Something kind of interesting. Back to Tailscale, the challenge I ran into while I was traveling, and I was kind of shocked that they had a nice setup for Wi-Fi. I think the campground I was at was like a 10 acres of area, and but the part that surprised me, and I didn't dig further into it, I didn't really want to take the time to poke at anything. I certainly didn't want to break anything on accident. They were aggressively stopping VPNs. OpenVPN, dead, wouldn't work at all. So if you try to initiate a connection to OpenVPN, and I even logged into my servers, and I didn't even see the connection get initiated. Like it didn't even get out of the network there. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Then I had Tailscale. That's how I was getting into things. I don't know what they were doing other than throttling it, but Tailscale, for example, which uses WireGuard on the back end, and also my WireGuard VPN wouldn't work properly either. The campground was aggressively, you would get about 300 millisecond ping time at there. Now, the easy solution was to switch to my Wi-Fi hotspot, and everything worked perfectly fine. But the campground had Wi-Fi, and I thought that was interesting. But I guess blocking VPNs was a way to keep the internet fast. I was able to watch YouTube. I was able to do things online. They had they had a lot of throttling they were doing, but I thought that was just because of the high number of people. There was over 100 campers at this campground, so there's a lot of people there connecting to things, and they had great coverage. But yeah, it was a little annoying though that they were so aggressive on the VPN blocking. So I'm wondering how often when I travel that's going to be an issue, and should I just go with Starlink? I guess it depends on how much I travel and how rural I go, because most areas seem to have access to cell networks. The problem with the cell networks I run into is saturation. Even if you have a connection, there's just too many people for too few tower connecting, so you end up with a huge choke in bandwidth. I'm an early person when it comes to waking up. In the morning, it works great. By the afternoon, you're at a trickle of your phone working. Even though you have a solid connection, it just goes really, really slow. Would a project like XAPG but based on Alpine Linux be cool? Asking for a friend. I don't understand the question completely. I don't really. I'm not. I mean, I'm aware of Alpine Linux, kind of. I don't use it, so I don't really have a strong opinion on that. SFP plus transceiver question. Are there any who work in any switch NIC that you have recommendations? The problem is it depends on the vendor. Like Ubiquiti doesn't seem to care. And I think someone earlier said MikroTik didn't care. And I don't think any of the MikroTiks I've tested have really been picky about which SFP plus transceiver. But when you get to the other switch manufacturers, like Cisco especially, Cisco is very picky about what goes in their switches. So I don't really have any solution or workaround. It's kind of like it's depending on the switch manufacturer. There's not like one all compatible one, because HP Aruba can be picky about which ones go in there. So it kind of depends on which switches you're using, which is just stupid because the physical device is the same. You're reflashing firmware to lie on these devices. When you order, they actually make a firmware flasher you can get for the SFP Plus. And all you're doing is lying and saying, oh, I'm a Cisco, I'm Intel, or I'm an Aruba or HPE one. And the card works. So it's physically the same device with a different firmware on it. I never understood that. In my server, the WireGuard Docker app works faster than Tailscale Netbird, but why? Not sure. Maybe because the Tailscale is written in Go. I think the Netbird one might be written in Go as well. And there's context switching that goes back and forth. The Go one is going to be running at user level versus the other one's going to work at kernel level. Kernel level is going to have less context switching between the user space and the networking stack. So it should be faster. And that's my guess as to why. I have a GL iNet 3000 travel router load balanced across 2 phones, 2 different networks. Yeah, that can be. I don't know that I'm getting a travel router because my camper. I can't remember the name of the company right now, but I was actually expecting it to be hot garbage. It came with my camper, built-in Wi-Fi, and I was actually shocked at how good it is. And 1, range, 2, firmware updates. It's several years old, but they have even old models that get good firmware updates. I think it's called the Wi-Fi Ranger. I'll pull it up real quick. I was actually surprised as a company. Like this company, very active firmware updates, nice setup, has some interesting ways you do things. I might grab one of these. I have the one. I have to look and see what model it is. But I was shocked at how well these things work. Mine's like it's completely integrated into my camper, which makes it that much nicer. It came with it. But I was expecting to have to rip it out and put something better in, but it works really well. So for a mobile travel router, I was like, this thing's actually pretty cool. And it's got a weird way you reset it. I had to reset it because the person didn't give me the credentials. I could have called them for after I bought the camper used. But what's interesting is to turn it off and reset it, you have to power cycle it 3 times in different increments of time. You turn it on, you have to wait till it fully boots up, then you have to turn it off for 3 minutes, I think it is, turn it back on, wait 3 minutes, turn it off, turn it back on, wait 3 minutes. You go through this weird pattern. And I printed all the documents. I couldn't believe it was that strange. And that's how you reset it back to factory defaults. Let's see. Still having problems using HA proxy with external sites. I do have a HA proxy troubleshooting guide that I recommend people watch. I made that one, I made the HA proxy tutorial, but then I've done enough consulting on HA proxy to make a guide to all the pitfalls that people have when they're setting it up. I have 2 MikroTik routers and 3 hosts. If I connect every host to every switch, hyperspeed drops to 1 megabit. If I unplug switch 10, I need something special in my hypervisor. You probably need to make a map and send it to me for how you're trying to set things up. That's best, easier discussed in my forums, if you will. Use something like draw.io to kind of make a map and go from there. Any thoughts on VMware going forward? If we know the cards we're going to fall with Broadcom, what do you recommend to customers? XCP-Ng. We've been finding it works pretty well for a lot of customer stuff. There's certain things that maybe will have some people, because VMware is actually kind of rolled back on some things. And due to the high switching costs of migrating the VMs, if VMware rolls back the price, maybe we'll sit for a little bit longer on VMware with some of the customers, especially the co-managed IT, because there's so many complexities there. Like if it's we manage greenfield, like I can put in what I want. Sure, XCP-Ng works great. If it's co-managed and they have a bunch of techs that are really skilled in VMware that do not want to change, and it's like a battle to change, why change it? Like, hey, here's the new price. If you don't want to change, this is what the new price from VMware is. Well, here's your upgrade costs. That's it kind of depends on a client by client basis. It's not that it's hard to support more than one either. We've even talked about supporting some customers on Proxmox because, we have a few Linux people. We could probably do that. But we do try to standardize on things a little bit. So there's some consistency in what we offer. But generally, a lot of XCP-NG. I have a few Dell servers now, and I like a KVM, perhaps a rack one. Jeff from Craft Computing has a KVM that he installed. I don't remember which one it is. I think it's something he got used. Check out the one he's got. I don't use them very often. They're kind of novel, but I just don't really have a use case. I did a review of the Bly KVM, and someone pointed out that, and it might be true, that the Pi KVM project, which it's a fork of, that they're too far different, and now the Bly KVM hasn't had updates in a while. But I don't know. I think people mistake that something needs an update all the time as an abandoned project. Not everything needs an update all the time. It does what it needs to do. It gives me KVM, and I don't need anything else. It's nicer to have something maybe that's rack mounted if you need it in a rack. I get it. There's uses for it. We just don't have many spots that we need that. Almost everything I have commercially has IPMI. That's why I'm not really, I don't care as much about the KVM like I used to, because IPMI just kind of comes with stuff. What do I tow my camper with? A Dodge truck. Proxmox favors single core or multi-core performance. I don't really know that that's true, that it favors. I don't think it favors either one. I mean, multi-core is going to give you better performance because you have more cores. So maybe I don't understand it as a question. With the MSO1 having USB-C, is there an argument to be made for using USB-C at 40 versus Ethernet cabling if it comes down to price? Well, Wendell talked about this when he has a video where he talks about using, I think it's the Thunderbolt, but the concept is the same. And if I'm not mistaken, the challenge is it can do 40, but there's some latency issues and some compatibility issues with doing it. So I don't know that I would reliably use it. It's kind of a fun experiment, but I don't know if the drivers are mature enough to give you a low latency 40 gig connection. I have to use Cisco devices for my fiber ISP connection, provider responsibility. What's was sort of compatible SFPs for Cisco third party, and they were fine. Is a lot of Cisco devices are fine with third party that are flashed to Cisco. If you go to fs.com and you get some of the cables, you can flash them or get them pre-flashed with the Cisco compatible, and those seem to work fine in Cisco devices. See, what do you prefer to use? IDEA, Snort, or Suricata? I have one of each. I don't have a preference. I don't know that one's that much better than the other. Yes, just caught up listening to me at 2x, and now I sound drunk. Yes, I do that a lot when I watch people too. I go to catch up, I put them at 2x. I listen to most of my podcasts at 2x. And yeah, it's weird when you hear, or for me, when I meet some of the people in person, I listen to 2x. It's even stranger. What's your opinion on being supporting Proxmox later this year? I have heard the beta is a little rough from people that were testing it, but hopefully they will come around and test it. You're asking a question about the CLI in Linux. When I use a separate user on my account to protect my root privileges, how do I set permissions safely? I guess I'm not exactly sure what your goal is when you're trying to set it up. So I'm not exactly sure how you want that question answered. Maybe a forum post where you can articulate better how you want it structured. Generally, you just run sudo to run things as root to get something installed, and you can keep things as your regular user in Linux. Do you have any instance why Netgate changed to an online installer? It's a universal installer, and what it does is, in a way, it's kind of convenient for someone who reloads a lot of Netgate devices. We used to have to contact Netgate to get a ticket, and I always thought that was kind of dumb. To get if we had a firmware that we had to wipe and reload of a Netgate product. Now with the universal installer, it checks if it's a Netgate product and automatically installs the Netgate software for that, the pfSense Plus. And if it's not, then it will install CE. It also, if you have a device that you bought the license for, it'll automatically register that and install the right version. So it's just a change that you can find the ISO still if you want, but it's just a way to automate the install process on the Netgate devices. So I don't really think it's a big deal. Some people really think it's a big deal. And I kind of shrug my shoulders going, you kind of have to be online anyways. I don't know. It seems to be people talked about it a lot more than I thought was necessary. Oh, answering the question about Proxmox, TrueNAS, multi-threading. So yes, I ran into, there's an edge case where when you're decrypting things, and this is a Linux problem, not a FreeBSD problem. So it's not a ZFS, it's ZFS on Linux. And I don't know if this is fixed or not. When encrypting a data set, certain tasks, but not all of them, that's the part that confused me, you would end up with a slower read performance, but a perfectly fine write performance. You would watch all the cores get used on a initial write to the drive, but when reading, you'd only see a single core get used while reading, and then therefore cause a really slowdown problem. My solution, because my videos were the only time I really ran into an issue, we're having trouble streaming at the full 10 gig saturating the connection. So I switched them to unencrypted. I'm not worried about my videos not being encrypted. They generally end up online anyways. So I don't know if someone would physically take the box and then have a copy of all my videos unencrypted. They'd have all my B-roll and see me picking my nose once in a while and maybe make a highlight reel for me, but I doubt it. And so I don't worry. That's the only place I really thought it was kind of a problem. And by the way, the processor they use in my particular TrueNAS is where the issue is. Other TrueNAS systems with higher performance, you don't even notice this. So it's kind of a Intel Atom problem with the Intel Atom based TrueNAS that I have, which is their essentially consumer version. This is not an issue you run into in production systems because it's, the performance is there. But it had to do something with the way ZFS handled things in the kernel in Debian, not in ZFS per se, because this same issue, as I said, does not exist in FreeBSD. Where do I start to learn about setting up IT infrastructure? What certs would help with that? I don't know. Because I've never got any certs for infrastructure. I don't have any certs at all, but I don't know much about certs for infrastructure. See what they have on CompTIA. Maybe they have some listed over there that work for that. I don't know. I'm actually not a great person to ask on that. Even most of the people I know that have been working in the industry are people who just been working in the industry for a super long time, like me. So I'm not sure which certs are on there. Someone may have an answer in the chat. Also, talk to the Bearded IT Dad. His channel, that's what he talks about, is IT career things, which is great. Any suggestions on how to boost speed for using OpenVPN back to the home lab? I'm only getting about 30 up and down. Buy a faster processor. If you're going to use the more complicated you have for encryption, the slower it will go. Faster processor is pretty much the easiest answer for that one there. Thank you for the donation. It says you're a member for 12 months. Awesome. So thank you for being a member, and hopefully you get well there, Ferris. Sucks being in a hospital, but at least you can watch a live stream. At least you have the internet. I've only ever been in a hospital for a couple days, and it's not a place I want to go back to. I won't lie. I don't like being there. Let's see here. Hey, brother, I've been busy lately, but I'm sure I was here last couple of Independence Days. This is a fun day. There's a lot of people online. I simply don't encrypt my data sets and simply encrypt the data prior to upload. Although I have a couple that are encrypted, I never notice an issue with encryption slow, but it's under 10 gigs. It's one of those things too that it still reads. It isn't reading at 10 gig, but it's still reading faster than 1 gig. So unless you're doing something like myself, where I'm streaming off of my TrueNAS a large file that was recorded in 4K, I think my videos are all ingested 4K 60. I edit them down to 4K 30 because it's a little bit more manageable for the uploads. But 60 gives me a little bit of extra headroom for if I need to speed up or slow something down. So those video files get big really quick. And so I notice if there's any problems. 10 gigs is fast enough to edit on perfectly fine. But there is a noticeable pause sometimes when I was encrypting everything. It's gone now. It's actually really fast too. Yeah, if you have a processor that has QAT, that will also provide. You need not just a processor, you need a system that has support for some of the crypto accelerators, and then use an algorithm compatible with those crypto accelerators. So the Netgate firewalls include Intel Quick Assist to accelerate VPN performance. That is true. There's also the Netgate has OpenVPN DCO. Thanks, Netgate, for sponsoring that code commit. And that is in the pfSense software. And that does speed up performance. The data channel offload. Did you remove your videos about using a wiki? Yes, because it was old and I got annoyed by the questions of make a new version of it. And because we're not using it anymore, I stopped making new versions of the video. So I did remove the old one. The problem is there's just too many issues with that version, and people telling me it doesn't match what it looks like now, or the thing you said doesn't work. Make a new version. I'm like, well, I'll take down the old one. Taking down old videos, I don't do it often, but when the videos are just irrelevant, it's not something that I think I should leave up, because all I'm getting is a bunch of people angry that there's not a new version of the video. So yes, the video, I move them to unlisted. I don't actually delete them. So you can find them sometimes using like the Wayback When machine and pointing it there and looking at my channel, or maybe a blog post I had from forever ago. But the problem is the video is not as relevant. There's other people have videos on that as a topic, but Wikipedia is run essentially on the Media Wiki, and that's what the video was on. I think Media Wiki is great. I think that I haven't looked in a while. I'm sure some people have made some newer videos on there, but there's not everyone likes Media Wiki because it's much harder to set up versus if you look at something like what was the other one? Hold on, I have a few of them I can pull up here for you. There are probably easier set up in Docker. These ones here. Close all these windows. This is a popular one right here, Wiki.js. So I'll throw a couple of these links in there for anyone interested. So you can look at Wiki.js or Bookstat. Both of these are popular projects that are going to probably be easier to get going. Where is DCO-in-pfSense? I'm using an N100 chipset with 16 gig. It's not crazy load by any means. If pfSense Plus has DCO, you don't get DCO unless you have a pfSense Plus. As said before, digging into fiber, looking for videos for terminating fiber. Is it as easy as it looks, or is there a potion to get good at it? I think it's like anything. Someone who's done a lot of them, which isn't me, by the way, can splice it. I have friends that splice fiber. I don't splice fiber. It's not my skill set. I've actually never done it. But if you have the right tools, yeah. My friend one of them has I think it's like $2,000, the Fiber Fusion device, and it works really well. I was told it's like idiot proof, but it's also like $2,000. So I don't know much about splicing fiber. We hire it out. We don't have any internal staff that does it, but some of our contractors do. They seem to do it well. It doesn't seem to be a challenge for them, but they've also done it a lot. So I don't know if it's as easy as they make it look, or they make it look easy because they've done it so many times repetitively. Because if you've watched me put an RJ45 on end, you'll probably think less of me. So I'm not particularly good at putting RJ45 ends on. And if that loses some tech cred, hey, it doesn't lose I'm at least being honest here about that. Do you have to patch a lot of systems because of the red regen SSH bug? We have every SSH port behind file. Yeah, we don't have any that aren't. This is a great example. And I may do a video on this topic tomorrow morning just because it's a quick video. This is why I tell people don't expose SSH. This is exactly like, oh, but I have keys. I'm not using username and password, so I feel I can expose my SSH server. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't expose SSH. Please stop. That's not a good idea. And this is exactly why. This is a great bug, by the way. I love the write-up on it. And where's it at here? It's in my security notes. I had to pull up through the web archive because their site was getting a bit beat up. So this is the web archive copy of the site. The site might be back up. It was just down when I looked at it. But yeah, this is a really good write-up on how they found the bug, all the reverse engineering and everything else. It's well written. I was happy to sit and read this over while I was camping and just go through everything that they did to get this to work. Very cool. It's going to be one of those attacks that's going to be long-term. It's not instant. It's not like, hey, here's a proof of concept. You instantly have access with a root shell. It takes some persistence. It takes some time. It takes a series of things to be in the right order to win the race condition. But that doesn't mean it's not going to get better and someone's going to build some automation around it so they can have multiple simultaneous servers attacking at the same time. So kind of neat. Yes. Definitely a really interesting one, but it's the perfect example of why I tell people don't expose SSH. As an MSP, did you start doing jobs based on your knowledge? Did you ever write workflows to streamline repetitive jobs? So prior to being an MSP, I worked in the corporate world where we were ISO certified. So I was writing processes back in 2000 for things. So I've been writing processes as part of a job and workflow officially under ISO guidelines for 25 years now, roughly 24 years. I got that corporate job in 1999 and started writing stuff, but it wasn't my job specifically to be the creator of the process until probably 2000. And yeah, so I've always kind of been in that mindset to write processes and jobs. It kind of led me to the entrepreneur path of running a business, was getting people to follow a series of processes. That's really what running a business is putting all the people in place to get them to do the thing that you need to do to build the organization. And so I definitely highly recommend it, getting good at that as a skill set. The only TN-scale encryption issue is keys not working as they should on my backup. TrueNAS-Scale, when I copy paste them from the new backup, seems to be a bug. Edge case, but forum got to work around. Well, that's cool. Being the IT quarterback is a great position. It's easy to know what to pay others to implement your plans. Yeah. Well, there's a way the race condition can be won in 64-bit. It's definitely much more impactful with the SSH regression. Was it called? It's SSH. It has a cool name, right? Go up to the top here. Aren't they calling it SSH regression or SSH regression or something like that? Anyways, I'm not going to get caught up in that semantic. Yeah, the ASLR, the address space layer randomization, is perfectly working as it should, because it's not just triggering a race condition, it's then landing somewhere where you can do something. And the address space layout randomization really makes a lot harder. It's one of those things, like, security is all about layers. Like, oh, cool, you found a flaw in SSH, which is technically similar to a bug from 2006. It's very similar to a previous CVE for that condition to be met. And then to go from there to say, all right, how are we going to pivot that and do something with it? Well, you've ran into that next layer called ASLR. So I think that's pretty cool. That these layers are working as expected. As we've put these layers on top of all these systems to make them harder to crack. Yeah, exposing SSH internet shows so many brute force attempts. You will, if you expose SSH, I don't care what port you put it on, you will slowly start to watch the log files get bigger and bigger, filled with random attempts. So yes, it's just why you don't do that. Have you tested WiseNet cameras? I have not. I haven't really messed with those much. What is the best way to securely expose SSH if needed? I don't think it's a big deal. Someone can get angry if they want, but if you limit it to certain IP addresses, for example, having static IPs at work, there's probably an SSH server here and there out of convenience that may have been opened up and filtered for only that IP address. I don't think that is too bad, because then the attack has to be launched from your IP, and someone will possibly say, well, you could do IP spoofing. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work that well to do IP spoofing and actually pull that off, because if you spoof the source IP, the data comes back to that source, unless you are going to hijack BGP and take over an IP, a block of IPs. Not impossible, but statistically a lot less likely. So yeah, probably not that big of a deal to do it that way. Provide an example of a process that I have written. I think I've done one. What do I have? Do I have one of my... Let's see if one of these is... They're all rewritten now, and I can't log into our... Well, I can, but I'm not going to log into our current system for it. So yeah, no, I don't... ask that question on business technicalities, because no one really wants me to go through process and procedures for things. I mean, you do, obviously, but most people do not on here. That's it. Regress session. Yes. Regress session. Remote unauthenticated code execution vulnerability in OpenSSH server. Yes. Did I say ASMR? No, I did not. Yeah, VPN and SSH key is the way. Tom has likely written at least one of each. If you ask him if you wrote X, the answer is yes. IP source filtering is great. The concept has been around a long time, and it's not particularly well implemented. Is called knock knock. Port knocking is amazing. It is an awesome thing. I don't know why a technology, I guess it's just harder to adopt. It's one of those technologies that's been around for so long, but for some reason doesn't get adopted very well, which port knocking is, I think you probably have a good Wikipedia article on it. Now let's see. Yep, good Wikipedia article. I'm sure this is it. I love this concept, and I think eventually the security problems are going to compel us to start doing more things like this. Port knocking is a cool concept. There's actually a company called, I think it's called Knock Knock Security. I can't remember their name. I remember hearing them talk on Risky Business once. There is a company actually building integrations for port knocking, and I think it's cool that the integrations are getting built. It just hasn't really reached wide stream adoption yet. I wish it would. It'd be really cool. I use ChatGPT for some simple coding. I was impressed with how clean it coded, even documented well. Where ChatGPT can be good is in some short form stuff. When it writes the long form stuff is where it starts hallucinating and doing weird things, and that's where the problems become. And yeah. Well, fails under security by obscurity, but if you think about it, it's one of those things like if I had 10 different ports that you had to touch in a specific order, that's enough entropy before it opens up that I think most things would not know it's there. So it is a little bit of security through obscurity. But then again, could you consider an SSH key? As long as I have obscured from the internet, my private SSH key isn't that a form of it? Granted, an SSH key is much higher entropy than a series of ports, but having that series of ports, you wouldn't know to look. That's the biggest thing about port knocking is you wouldn't know unless you knew the order of the knock. You wouldn't know that something was there that was going to give you any data. You would scan it and it would say every port is closed. But suddenly, if you hit in a pattern, and I just say 10 as an arbitrary number, but 10 different spots in this particular order, okay, now we've got a little bit of entropy there, and we have to hit it in this order, and we don't know what order to hit it in. So even randomizing and sending, massive amounts of spray data is not likely to hit this. Because at some point, if you're spraying that much data, you could just say, all right, we're just going to block someone who's banging away this loudly and slow them down some more. So it's a neat middle ground. I love the ability of VPN to my home network via the UDM. I'm rarely on the same IP to restrict to this access. Yeah, that VPN is definitely the way to go. And if you're a VPN or you're on somewhere where you have a lot of moving IP addresses, that's where overlay networks, NetBird, I've done a video on. Tailscale, I've talked a lot about. Those two are both great for kind of just keeping connectivity on. Unless, as I mentioned earlier, you're at a campground that does some aggressive blocking of VPNs. Yeah, I think ChatGPT has its uses. It does things in small context windows well. It's the larger context windows where it hallucinates a lot more. And I don't think these are really solvable problems. It's one of those, like, the current way we build LLMs is really the issue. So entropy gives you flashbacks to security, as it should. I just put everything behind UDP ports, can't force them as easily as you only get an answer if you send the right data. WireGuard is why it's a popular VPN, using UDP only for WireGuard, and makes it a little bit more challenging to figure out what's there and get proper responses. Oh, let's see. All right. Well, this is where I'm going to end this. I am going to go celebrate with some friends on 4th of July. I got some events that I'm going to go head over to. I got a few random things I got to get done before then, but I'll probably work on some new videos, like I said earlier in this. Definitely a new one on Syncthing. I realized it's spent such a long time, and I'll talk about how I set things up. I'll talk about my 15-year Linux challenge. Will I switch back to Windows? Probably not. I'll make that part really clear. So, probably UDP is many ISPs block UDP. No, I don't think many block UDP. Because QIC runs over UDP 443. That's what some ISPs will do is narrow you to port 443 on egress. So that's definitely that's definitely where you may want to consider. And something I may play with at some of these. I may play with setting up stuff that tries to defeat VPNs and then come up with ways around it for setup. I know there's a couple. I think Stunnel is a way around it, but maybe I'll make a video on that if I get around to it, of like how to defeat some of these VPNs. That might be something people are interested in. It's something I'm suddenly interested in, not for nefarious reasons because I live in a highly censored area of the world. It's because I want to be able to go and travel in my camper, but still have a VPN to all my home lab stuff. And, that seems like a reasonable request. And many of you probably have a similar request. So, all right. Thank you everyone for joining, and I'll see y'all next time. Take care. Happy 4th, everyone celebrating it. And yes, all that fun stuff. And celebrate it if you're not. Celebrate it on our behalf. There we go.